You are about to listen to Only Fools and Collecting, a podcast for those who like a good moan about figure collecting and don't mind naughty words.
Hello, and welcome to this bonus episode of Only Fools and Collecting. So we thought we'd do one on 3D printing, and we got Mr. Steve with us and
Hello.
Mr. Zach, the Oxfather.
What's up, guys?
How we doing,
Glad to be
boys?
here.
We all right?
Pretty good, yeah.
It's been so long that I've recorded with Steve. I'm so excited.
I know, it's been
likewise.
a while.
Likewise.
It's been a while. Yeah, so we just want to start off by saying a big thanks to Whatever Scrapyard and Backdrops and Bases for sponsoring us. Any heads you want, Whatever's your man. Any backdrops you want, Dean and Kev are the guys to go to. So big shout out to those guys for sponsoring yet again. So this episode is going to be a little bit different. It's not so much about figures, it's about 3D printing. So we had a show a couple of weeks ago where we had a mere mention of a 3D printer, and then for the next 10 minutes that was all that filled the chat with questions and stuff. So we thought we'd knuckle down and do a little bit on it, because I know, like, I've only been 3D printing a year. Steve's been doing it a lot longer, and he's like the guru when it comes to this kind of stuff.
Well, don't build me up that much.
Mate, you're way better than I am. Like, way better. And I know, and I'm genuinely shocked and surprised that Zach hasn't got a 3D printer yet.
Yeah, I just have a 2D printer, and that thing doesn't work half the time, so it's kind of scared to get into the
Maybe
3
after this
dimensions.
podcast.
Yeah,
Yeah,
my aim is by the end of this one to have you logged on and buying one.
There you go.
Exactly.
Depends on how the Patreon does. One thing I wanted to also mention, we're filming this September 2nd, and we might put this episode into storage for a bit. So if you're watching this, and I already have a printer or something else, like, just know that the timeline is not messed up.
Yes.
But I'm excited. I asked Ian a bunch of questions, and he's like, fuck it, let's just do a backlog. It's way easier than typing this question. So,
Yeah.
Ian, what do we need, bro?
Yeah. So I should start off by saying, when I got into 3D printing, I jumped on the tail end of the last kind of generation of printers. So they were LCD screens that were converted phone screens, and it would take, to print a head sculpt would take like 9 hours, and it was a real labour of love to set it up and to walk away from it. And the build plate I had was probably about the size of my phone, so it was tiny. I could probably get like 2 heads on it, and that was about it.
That's
And
basically
you
what
print-
they were. They were like colour phone screens, weren't they?
Yeah, they really were. They were so small. Irie, hello, how are you? Yeah, they were tiny, absolutely tiny machines. Really, they were a phone shoved into some casing with a vat and then a build plate that would lower. That was it. So when I jumped on the tail end of that generation, you could pick up a wash and cure machine and the printer for about 300 quid, which at the time was fucking brilliant, because that's what you used to spend just on the printer. So I kind of jumped in with a bit of nudging from Steve, going, have you seen this one? Have you seen this one? Have you seen this one? And I was like,
I have a habit of doing
fuck
that.
it. Yeah, Steve's the only reason I've got a Mono X. He was like, oh, look at this. And I went for it. So I think initially this is a bare basic what you need. So the printer, you can't really print without the printer. Resin, so you can go water washable or just normal resin. And for me, you have to have a wash. Now this is personal, like, you have to have a wash and cure machine. You can jerry rig UV lights up and washing containers of either IPA or water if using water washable. But the wash and cure machines, for the price of them, just save so much time.
Yeah, totally.
Massively. And then, just then it's
Which
all the sundries.
Which one here is the wash and cure? Is it the one that looks like the little paint can?
So,
Or is it the green box?
So these are both UV curing things that people have jerry rigged up with UV lights in, and obviously a lid. So that one in the middle, big green one's one with a turntable, put a turntable in it. So you can, when I was waiting for my wash and cure machine to turn up, I jerry rigged a cardboard box, lined it with tin foil, and shoved the UV light in there with a turntable, that did me for about 2 weeks. But it's a really imprecise way of doing it. And then I got a wash and cure machine, and it's you literally once you printed your print, you take it off the build plate, you stick it in the machine in water or IPA, whatever you're using, set it to wash for however minutes you want. So I normally wash stuff for about 5 minutes. There's a little whirly dervish at the bottom that spins and spins and spins and makes the water go around. That cleans it. Then you take that off, put a different plate on that's a turntable, whack it on for 5 minutes, and the UV lights will shine through and cure it. It makes things cleaner, and it saves you so much more time.
So that one in the top right, that's your wash and cure. It looks very similar to the actual 3D printer, to be honest, or some of them anyway.
Yeah, they do very much look like their printer counterparts, but you end up with like funnels, paint strainers to put the resin back in the bottle, because what you don't want to do is print something, then just pour the resin straight back in the bottle, because sometimes you can get little bits of dried up resin and stuff. Or if you have a failed print, you can have bits of whatever you've been printing in the vat. So if you just pour that straight back into the bottle, then next time you come to use it, if you think of having loads of bits of grit, your build plate will come down and just grind whatever you poured in there into the FEP. So the FEP is the piece on the printer, that kind of vat at the bottom that screws in. The bottom of that's clear, because that's where the light shines up through, and it's curing layer upon layer as it pulls it out the resin. So you won't have a big gap between that and the FEP. So if you've got anything in there, it will just push into the FEP, and that's where you get holes and shit like that. And then before you know it, you're just flooded with resin because it's all seeped through and fucked your machine up. So there's loads of little... I mean, you do get a fair bit with the printer, so you get scrapers and stuff like that, so you don't really have to go out and buy scrapers and all of that.
They usually give you a couple of paint strainers, which you need loads of paint strainers, because every time you drain it, you have to pour it through a paint strainer through the funnel back into the bottle. Otherwise, you can contaminate your good resin. You also need loads and loads of disposable gloves, like latex or the blue nitrile ones, because you're going to go through them. You don't want resin on your fingers, because if you get it on your fingers, you don't realise, and you go out into sunlight, it'll burn your fingers because the resin just cures on it and takes your skin off. So you've got to be careful with it all.
And then masks too, right? Like respirators and stuff?
No, not really. I don't anyway.
No, I must admit I don't. I got... I
mean, does it smell like the machine, like the liquid?
A little bit. The modern resins are better than they used to be, to be honest.
Yeah. It all depends on the resin you're using. So I used photon resin, which I thought smelt a little bit. Elegoo, I think probably out of the ones I've used, probably smelt the most. The Nova resin that I swear by now, I hardly smell it. I bought 2 carbon filters that Elegoo make that you put inside the printer. So where on that photo where it says any cubic new photon series, the Photon X is the one I've got, and where you see the vat, you put them just behind it, so that's kind of filtering the fumes while you're doing it. And I always have a window open with my door open so it gets a through draft.
You
don't
really want good ventilation.
Don't really notice it. I wouldn't suggest, if you're just in a basement somewhere with no windows or anything like that, just having it burning away in the corner.
You see people on the 3D printing group saying, I'm thinking about putting this in my bedroom. Would it be all right? I'm like, no, don't put it in your bedroom, for God's sake. At least have it in a different room that you're not living in.
Jesus.
Yeah. So mine's in my spare room, and I sometimes, when I'm snoring, have to go and sleep in there. But where the printer is, you've got the printer, the wash and cure, the carbon filters in there, and then the window here. So it's always open. You've always got a free breeze in, and you've just got to be a bit careful about cleaning up after yourself and not leaving. Like the wash and cure machine, you'll have water in the wash and cure machine that's all got resin in it. So it's about making sure you cure that and you dispose of that properly, and you're not just leaving it in the room for you to be huffing the fumes constantly.
So how do you dispose of the water resin? I mean, I assume you can't pour it down the drain.
Yeah, even water washable, you shouldn't just pour it down the drain. What I tend to do is, this is another good thing with the wash and cure machine, is I will stick it with nothing in it, just the water in the wash and cure machine, and set it to cure for like 10 minutes or so, and then it goes really cloudy. I then strain that into an empty bottle, and then I just throw it in the bin. You can take it down to the tip and treat it as like hazardous, but I tend to just chuck it in the bin. Some people will leave it outside for days on end in direct sunlight to separate it and then strain it, but
Yeah.
if you've got a wash and cure machine, some of the wash and cure machines, like the new one I've got, you can set it to cure for like half an hour. So you can really blast stuff to get it to go. But it's definitely not something you want to be tipping down your drain, because resin can eat seals and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So the last thing you want to do is tip it, say, down your plug-o upstairs in your bathroom and then fuck all your pipework up.
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing with me, like, I kind of want a printer, but I don't really want to buy a wash and cure and all the other things, because one, for space, and then budget also. I mean, in Texas we have pretty good sun, like just fucking. I mean, it's pretty intense. And I've been looking at the water washable resins because, not that alcohol is expensive or anything, but I mean, if I could use tap water or distilled water, I mean, I'd much rather go that route.
Yeah.
If definitely. We have enough sun, is a UV curing machine necessary, or is it kind of just like a creature comfort type thing?
It will take a lot longer. It doesn't matter if you live in Texas or anywhere else that gets 40 degrees. It's still nowhere near as powerful as having, as actually being right next to the UV lights, because there are certain bandwidth that are tuned to the resin, whereas sun doesn't. Sun is all sorts of different. It's along the spectrum of light.
It's like all different.
What you have to be really careful with water washable as well is if something's hollow. So because what you can do to save resin is hollow a print. But what you need to do is put drain holes in and a way to cure the inside. And sometimes when you download a file, it might have natural pockets in. So you have to watch out for those, because what will happen is you'll cure the outside and then the inside's still wet and it just rips itself open. But it normally happens like a couple of weeks after. So you could go through and paint something and then it burst open. So a guy sold a Vader sculpt to that lives in Crawley. I must have hollowed the dome, so I printed a replacement dome for him. So I've got a replacement that I printed that is solid, and I know because I checked digitally and I even drilled a hole in it to make sure. What had happened was along the back and along the top here, it had just burst open and all resin had dripped down. Luckily, because of Vader has this lip, none of it went on the figure, it just trailed off down the back. So just throw it away. I'll print you a new one that's solid and you can glue it on. But you have to be really careful, because I've had it with a few prints where things are hollow that they just burst open. Days. Yeah, I mean, I was doing mostly printing. Yeah, no, go on.
Yeah, no, I was saying I ended up mostly printing solid since then, because I just had so many troubles with hollow prints on. It's only with water washable it seems to be. It's fine with the other ones, but I've only ever used water washable, so I just had to work around it.
Yeah, same here. I mean, I did some hunter backpacks and I put a big fuck off drain hole in it, and the first one I did with my old wash and cure machine was fine. It didn't rip open. It's absolutely fine. The second lot I did with my new wash and cure machine, it just won't touch the inside, so it just would burst open. So yeah, you need to learn to kind of work around it. But there are different resins you can get. Like there's water washable. You got flexi resins, which are a bit more expensive. They're about 60 odd quid for a bottle. But as the name suggests, they're flexible. So the clone kits I've been printing, I really need to get some of it just so I can batch print. It's like the belts and bits like that. So there's a little bit of give in them, because resin is quite brittle. So if you are doing like the clones, there are bits that you almost just want to snap on purpose and then put some banding behind it and stuff like that so it moves, because it's not very forgiving because of how brittle it is. So if you've got anything that's quite thin, because one issue you have is files for everything, but a lot of the time they're cosplay files. So if you picture something that's full scale and you shrink it down, it looks fantastic, but you've also shrinking the thickness down as well. So when you take that down, it's very, very thin and very, very flexible. Doesn't really bode well for resin, particularly when you're taking supports and stuff off, because you end up ripping great holes in it. So you've got to consider stuff like that and look at ways to kind of thicken the files using different software, which isn't always easy. Like the software, slicing software, piece of piss, anyone can use it. Stuff like Mesh Mixer and all of that you might use to prepare a file isn't the easiest thing in the world to work with.
Yeah, that's the thing that scares me the most is the support stuff. Like,
so
it just seems like it would be tedious.
So I'm really lazy. I use auto supports, and I will add and take away where I see it needs it.
Same.
What I tend to do is I use light supports, and I will run them at either 50 or 75%, which is overkill. Like, I'm using more resin than I need to with it, but I don't get print failures with it, and it may leave a couple of little support marks that I just need to sand off. But a lot of it's to do with orientation. So if I'm printing that, because I think this is Dean's actually that I need to paint. What I will do is I will just print it like that. I will stick it like that on the build plate, and I will just print it like that. And then what you have is along the bottom, you see those little, trying to get the focus, the little bumps. So that's where the supports were. But that's in a place where you aren't going to notice that.
Yeah.
So you tend to get good at
hiding the crimes.
Hiding them. And like another example is, say, these bullets that I'm doing, the Roger Rabbit bullets. So these were printed on my old printer. That was just on the build plate. And then you'll have a couple of supports that came off of like some of the bits that poke out. So it really depends on what you're printing and how you orientate it, to how you hide those. But it's really not that difficult. And your layer height and stuff like that you set within the slicer. So back with my old printers, you would try and do, if I was printing a sculpt, I would try and do it at 0.3 of a millimeter, because you would get quite good detail out of that. But because it is printing 0.3 of a millimeter at a time, it would take fucking forever to print anything. If you go at half a mil at a time, it's a lot quicker. But typically with the older printers, you would see lots of little layer lines. Now with the newer generation of printers like we've got, you can print at that 0.5 and you get all that detail because they're 4K screens. You're not printing it at like a 2K resolution anymore. So they've made some quite big advancements in it. And I've found it's made me rethink how I collect things. Because an example is the Trooper, the 501st. So I looked at it and went, actually, I've already got the helmets. I can print the Gatling gun. I can print the backpack. I don't really need the exclusive. So a lot of the time, the exclusive versions of stuff now, I'm looking at it going, well, I can print all that. And I can print a lot of the other accessories, like Mandalorian. Like, how many people were printing Mandalorian accessories? Like, you can just, it makes life as a collector and a customizer a hell of a lot easier. Because it's files for everything.
It's so much easier, doesn't it? Because you can you buy an outfit and a head sculpt, then you can print the gun and whatever else other accessories you want. It's great for accessories. Yeah,
and when you join a lot of the 3D printing groups, you find a lot of really talented sculptors who people regularly commission them to make full-blown statues. So when you message them and go, "I just want a head," they think you're absolutely mad because they're like, "Well, what do you mean just the head?" Well, I collect figures. I want to put it on a figure and I'm going to do all of this. my Batman Begins sculpts, a guy called Lux Sculpts, I approached him and he designed it for me, sent me the file, and I printed it myself. Like, it makes, you've got so many more options for stuff because you can just get the file, print it, and then that afternoon you're sitting there painting it.
It's fucking wild.
It's mad. The fact that you look at a screen and go, that digital file, I can have that in my hand in like 3 hours is mental. Absolutely mental. But yeah, we got some photos.
What type of printers are you guys using?
So you take this one, Steve, because you've got a different type of printer as well, haven't you?
I've got a few. So the one at the bottom, that is my workshop. So the one on the bottom of the picture on the left there, that's what's called an FDM printer. So that prints using filaments, which is like a big reel of plastic that feeds in. It heats it up to about 200 degrees, and then it moves around the print bed and just lays the plastic down, and then it builds it up in layers. Those are good types of printers. I'll show you in a minute. They tend to get used for things like props, like large scale things. A lot of people make helmets, large dioramas, like Ian's just showing you there. It's just they tend to get used for more robust pieces that you just need the scale for. You can get very, very big versions of those. That's what I started out with, but the problem with them is you can't get very, very high definition. It's certainly nothing like what you can on resin printers. So that was an Anycubic Mega S, I think it is. Quite a typical one. There's another company called Creality, which actually use one of my resin printers. So Creality make one called the Ender 3 and the Ender 3 Pro. That's a very, very common starter printer, a bit like the Anycubic one I've got there. Either one's pretty good, and you can get them very cheap. But if you're into figure collecting, then you want a resin printer, because you're mainly going to be wanting to make head sculpts, accessories, even diorama pieces now you can do with the bigger printers. So on the top shelf, from left to right, you've got the Anycubic Mono X, which is the same one Ian's got in his picture on the left. Then I've got a Creality. It's not a very fancy name. I think it's a LD002R. It's a bit of an older one. That's a color screen technology. So the Mono X is a mono screen, which is the newer ones, and the color ones, which are the older ones, are like the previous generation. And it's obviously a lot smaller as well. So like a 5.5-inch screen, whereas the Mono X has got a 9-inch screen, almost the size of an iPad, if you like. And then the next one along from that is my Wash and Cure, which is, again, it's a smaller Wash and Cure that was meant for the middle machine you can see there. Ian's got the big Wash and Cure. He'll tell you about it in a minute, but I could do with getting the big one, to be honest, because sometimes I'll print something on the big printer and it only just fits in my Wash and Cure, when I could do a bigger one, really. But yeah, so the reason they moved to mono, I was going to say earlier, they moved to the color screens don't let as much light through, because they've got obviously a red, green, and blue pixels, and they, even when they're fully open, they don't let 100% of the light through. Whereas a mono screen, it either lets light through or it doesn't, and when it does let light through, it lets all of it through. So you actually end up with a lot more UV lights coming through, and it basically means the machine can print quicker because it's doing that. So anyone who's looking to buy a resin printer, just make sure you get a mono one, because you'll just be printing a lot faster. So that's my stuff.
The ones that I'm looking at right now, it's the Elegoo Mars 2. This one says 2K monochrome LCD screen. And then there's the Elegoo Mars 2 Mono MSLA, and I'm not sure what that is, but this is monochrome.
It's basically the same thing. Yeah, they tend to call the same printer different names, but it is basically the same thing. It's worth looking at the Saturn as well, which is a bigger version of the Mars 2. Yeah,
and then the last one is the Anycubic Photon Mono.
Yeah,
because I really want to stay around $200. Is kind of where I think. Yeah, I'm not really trying to buy a $600 printer.
No, exactly. Well, the Mono is a good printer, to be honest. You can get the H version of my middle one, which is also the Creality LD002H, about the same kind of money. The only thing with the Anycubic Mono is it hasn't got carbon filters, so you'd have to buy them like what Ian was saying before, whereas some printers have carbon filters built in. So if you're going to run it in a room where people are living, then I'd try and find one that's got a carbon filter. So I think the Elegoo will have the Mars 2, whereas the Anycubic Mono doesn't.
So between those three, the Anycubic and the Elegoo, are either of those like much better, or are they pretty much the same thing?
They're pretty much the same. I mean, the internals and all the stuff inside is all everything. They all come from the same company. So there's a company called Chitu, which they make all the boards, all the mechanisms, all the screens, all the software. Everything that's inside the printer is made by Chitu. And then there's a software called Chitu Box, which runs, which you can. It's one of the slicing softwares you can get. What the likes of Creality and Anycubic and Elegoo do is they'll take the Chitu hardware and they'll basically build a case around it and all the motors and the box itself. So it doesn't really matter which printer you get, you're basically buying the same thing. It's the extra stuff around it, what's the case made of, has it got carbon filters, has it got dual axes rods and all that type of stuff. They like customize the actual frame of the thing. The only thing I'd say is Anycubic and Creality are known for not having the best support. Elegoo have got the biggest fan following, and they have the biggest Facebook groups, and they reportedly have the best support. So I'm always hearing from Elegoo fans that that they rave about how well they're looked after compared to Anycubic and Creality customers. So ironically, me haven't got those.
No. So I used to my first Creality, that broke, and what's that? That broke. I said this. Yes, I was like, what? That broke, and I had it for probably less than 3 months. 3-4 months. So it broke, and I reached out to Creality, and they pretty much told me to go suck a dick. They first of all we want you to open it up, and we want you to take some voltage readings from this part of the board. And I was like, okay, I don't actually own a voltage meter, but I guess I'll go and get one. And then when I took it apart, they had glued in everything, and no matter what I did to try and take the particular bit that they wanted me to get a reading from out, I couldn't, because it was all glued in. And I was like, if I keep pulling it or I try and heat it up, I'm going to break it. And I kept going backwards and forwards with it, and I was like, look, I don't know how many other ways to say this. I can't give you the reading because you've caked the whole thing in glue. Like, it was caked. And they were like, well, we need the reading, nothing we can do. And I was like, but at this point, the printers had become so cheap, I got one for 60 quid off of eBay that I ended up using until my new printer turned up. So it was a bit of a stopgap. But yeah, but with Anycubic, I messaged them because my printer started making a weird noise as it was lowering. And every now and again, I think I've got a print actually here that has it on. Every now and again, I get these weird little pit marks like that. Let me see if I get it in focus. See there, just here, I get these weird kind of marks. They're not. I can sand them out. It's not a problem. But I was like, it's making this noise and it's doing that. And it seemed to only be things that were at a certain height. So to be fair on them, they came back almost straight away, and they were like, right, re-grease the rod, clean that, do this, do that, then let us know. And I was like, oh, and my casing has started to crack all along the inside, which was a known issue. And they were like, okay, not a problem. Give us your address, fill this format, and we'll ship you one out. So within about 2 weeks, I had a new case. So the case I've got, where on that picture it says Anycubic, is actually now Shamford. It's a completely different case that they sent us. But that was a really good experience with them, as opposed to Creality, who were just like, yeah, we want you to completely strip the printer apart, take readings, rebuild it, and then send us the stuff. And I was like, if I bought a fucking TV, you wouldn't tell me to be stripping the cunt. But you've just got to put up with that with this kind of stuff, because
it's hit and miss, unfortunately. There's loads of stories. It doesn't pick a company. You'll find good and bad stories about their support.
Yeah.
It just, not speaking ill of Chinese companies, but they're just, I think if it's an easy fix, they'll do it. And if it's not an easy fix, then they'll just have you going around in circles. Yeah. So that's kind of where it goes.
What some people do, because if you buy directly from the manufacturer, it's so much cheaper. Like, my print was probably massively. 200 quid cheaper than it would have been if I'd bought it through someone like Amazon. The only thing is, if you do buy it through Amazon, you do get a better level of customer care, because you can take advantage of just being able to send it back to Amazon.
But it's Amazon, isn't it? Yeah. No quibble.
Yeah, so they will just swap you one. But you are paying.
You do find good deals. Well, yeah, you say that, but sometimes Amazon have like ridiculous sales on some of the printers, like the Elegoo printers especially. If you keep checking back, you'll get the latest Mars printers for huge discounts. So it is worth. If you can find one on Amazon at a good price, just get it.
They're good for resin, the actual resin as well. So
yeah, totally.
What I've set up a subscribe and save on the Nova resin, so every 2 months it just sends me a bottle, and by subscribing and saving, it knocks like £6 off a bottle, because I pretty much buy a bottle every month, sometimes 2 bottles depending on what I'm doing, because
you print a lot though.
I'm a shitbag. I've got boxes of stuff I printed down here that I've got no use for, because I tend to batch print, and I will just set it like those knee pads and stuff. So I just filled up the build plate and printed them. But what I have started to do is some stuff I'll print a load off, and I will just have a listing on eBay for like Mandalorian parts that just sits there live. And every now and again someone buys a set for say 15 quid, and I just post it off. Because I've got them, they're sitting there, they might as well go. Mm-hmm. But it is tempting when you have that bigger build plate just to load it up. And that's where you have to start to be careful, because you will get to the point where you can't move for stuff. And although it is very, very cool to be able to print stuff, sometimes you don't really need to print stuff. So like the Clone Troopers at the moment. So I've got one up there I printed. I've got another one up there that I've got to print another couple of bits for. But I'm fucked for space. But because I now have the ability to print clones, I'm like, oh, I'll print another one. Oh, I'll print another one. Oh, I can do this one.
Literally cloning clones.
Yeah, and I'm like, what the fuck do I do with them? So there is that. You do run into that danger of overprinting stuff and not having a use for it.
Also for me, when I'm doing test prints, like when I do quite a few big pieces, and sometimes I'll do a test print and I'll end up doing 2 or 3 test prints, and I don't throw the test prints away ever. Yeah. So I've got, like, you'll see in a minute, I did a ET. I've still got, in the top right, I've still got about 4 test print ETs, which I've got no use for, because you could never make a figure out of them. Or a statue out of them, but I've still bizarrely still kept it. I just don't want to throw it away.
I'm exactly the same. You'll print something and there'll be something slightly wrong with it, and it's enough that you can't use it, but at the same time you're like, oh fuck, I don't really want to get rid of that. Like,
Steve, I need you to print me some Among Us, the monster.
I knew you would ask me this. Yeah, I will do it for you. I promise.
I need 2, bro. Like one monster, one regular for my desk.
No worries.
You printed these really good, bro. These look fucking dope.
They come out fantastic, yeah.
How big are these little guys?
Probably about 3 inches tall.
Dude, I need those. So that looks fucking incredible.
Done. Everything Steve prints always looks fantastic.
I know, what the fuck? This shit
I don't know how he does it. I'm like, I can't see a single support mark, no layer lines, nothing. He's just like, boom, perfect.
I don't know, just got a gift, I think that's what it is.
He's a prodigy of the 3D world.
That so just I'll talk you through these, but the Nightbed, the Jack Skellington, that's a 3rd scale bust. It's absolutely huge. So it's about 8-9 inches tall. I had to print the head in one go on the Mono X. That was quite a big print. It took a couple of goes as well. That's actually hollow. And I had to I had to really shake that a lot to make sure I'd got all the uncured resin out of it. And then I printed the base. And actually, that's the wrong picture I gave to you guys to put on here, but there's also a bow tie, which is quite wide as well. So it's as wide as it is tall when you see the final thing. And then where you can see Hot Toys Ripley, next to her, you've got an egg with the face hugger like coming out of the egg. And that was a fantastic model that was off Gambody. So Jack Skellington and that one and ET, and there's if you go, there's a website called Gambody, which is they're like pre-made kit 3D files kits, if you like. So the Jack Skellington bust, it comes already disassembled into the head and the chest, and then the bow tie, and then that face hugger. You actually get the main body of the egg, and then the flappy bits that come off, and then the face huggers in like 3 separate pieces, and then there's the base. It's all dissected for you, and then you just literally load it up on the print bed and print it off. It's a really good website for anyone that's want to do bigger stuff. It's an easy way of doing it. Same with ET. So ET I did on my bigger printer. I first of all tried it on the small printer, but you have to print it without the arms on. So you could get the file with or without the arms already attached. But I wanted him to be completely solid, so I wasn't messed about with glue and filler and all that type of stuff. So I did it on the big printer, but that took 4 attempts, and each attempt you're using half a bottle of resin. It's like 15, 20 quid. So just to get one good ET cost me about 100 quid. I am going to start printing them and selling them, because I know it's 6 scale as well. So I made sure it was exactly the right height for 6 scale. But yeah, it turned out really well, and then obviously painted it myself. And I'm going to do lots more now. I've got the print perfected. I can print loads more off. It was these fingers that kept going wrong. I had to keep adjusting the supports because the fingers weren't printing 100% and all that type of thing. So you have to really be on bigger prints, especially intricate ones. You have to keep adjusting the supports and then printing off a test one. And if it goes wrong, that's in the bin. Then you can't fix it. So you've got to try again and keep going. You got the Among Us ones.
You get some really weird failures, don't you? On fingers,
you do.
I find that with some of the small stuff. Or like it delaminates, so you end up seeing each layer because it's all kind of spread out.
Weird stuff, yeah. And I had some really annoying failures on when I was doing ET, because the whole thing was perfect except one finger hadn't printed. And there's nothing you can do there unless you're going to start getting the milliput out and try and make a finger, which is just not really worth trying. So Mrs. Doubtfire, so there's a couple of quarter scale heads and a 6 scale. So that was actually a commission that I printed off for a guy who uses, I do all his printing for him. So he gets the 3D sculpts made by a sculptor. Then he sends me the files, and then I print them off for him. And then we're just about to start doing some small print runs for both quarter scale and 6 scale. I think we're doing Beetlejuice next, which should be good. And then the bottom right, so the Among Us figures, the files for those are actually on another really good website called Thingiverse. So anyone's getting into 3D printing, you're going to head straight to Thingiverse, because everything on there is free. And it is we've talked about this before on the podcast, but it's just amazing how many people will make something or design something, a 3D design, really, really well done. They've put many hours into it, and they just chuck it on there and give it away for free. So you can download all of the crew from Among Us and print them all off. So I've done, you can see there, the imposter, the normal crewmate, and then the one in purple on the right, you can't really tell there, but it's actually one of the ghosts. But there's other files in there as well. Yeah. So you can print off the body that splits in half and it's got the bone sticking out of it, and you can take it off and put it back on. So I've got to do that one next. My son keeps telling me which one he wants printed next, so I've got to do that.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And in the bottom, it's just an image of what a head looks like with supports. And just to explain to people that the way that is there, it actually prints upside down. So when you're slicing and adding supports, you actually have to think in 180 degrees the other way up, because what's actually going to you're fighting gravity the whole time, and as it's printed, it's sucking up from the resin tank, and what the supports are doing are actually bridging the gap between, they're called islands. So if all of a sudden it's going to print something that would just be in mid-air, you have to have a support touching that, otherwise it's going to stick to the FEP and you're not going to get it to print properly. So that's the slicer software does quite a good job of adding the supports, but you can see that, and you can see them all sticking up there. But occasionally you've got to like have a look yourself and just say, actually, that's not going to print properly. So you have to add your own supports as well, and that's where you end up with failures.
Yeah, it'll over support as well. So it'll put supports on, depending on the angle that you've put the sculpts. So it'll put a support, say, bang on the end of the nose. And actually, if you've got it angled a certain way, the nose becomes self-supporting because of the angle you've got it at. So sometimes you need to go in and go, no, I don't think I need one there. Or it just do something stupid, like it just suddenly put one there. So the support's coming up, over, and then back down. And you're like, that's not good. By the time you've printed this, the actual model's printed. So you just take it off.
Exactly. It's always a trade-off as well, because, like what Ian's just said there, yes, you can have a support on the nose, but that particular sculpt, that's Anarchy from the DC universe.
Yeah.
It had quite an intricate hair at the back. So what I didn't want to do is angle it too far back and have supports all over his hair, because then you ruin the definition on the hair. So every print is different. You've always got to say, well, actually, what do I want to sacrifice more? Is it the detail at the front, detail at the back, or where do you want to put the supports really? So it's a constant learning curve.
Because hair is normally quite a good place to lose some of the supports.
Yeah.
And as well, if you're washing the model in warm water, getting the supports off is dead easy, and it doesn't leave too much of a mark. Yeah. If you're just doing it in cold water, getting the supports off can be a proper bastard. I find if I cure something, wash it in warm water, I can, particularly if it's a piece of armour, so the Clone Trooper stuff, like the breastplates and that, you can get your fingers behind it and just run it along the supports, and they all just pop off, and it's fine. It makes life a lot easier.
It's a good trick. I mean, I've even read that the guys who don't use the water washable, they use the stuff that you have to use the isopropyl alcohol for, they'll actually wash it in isopropyl first, then they'll dunk it in warm water to soften the things, and then pull the supports off before they cure it. So they'll actually use isopropyl and water. Because
I use IPA wipes as well. So even though I wash everything in warm water, I then get the IPA wipes and wipe it all over. What that does is it takes the water off, so you don't leave any chalky marks, and it dries it a lot quicker, and it just gets rid of any shitty bits that are on there, and it tends to work.
Air dry it otherwise, haven't you?
Yeah, I found that works quite well. So I mainly print head sculpts, and accessories and stuff for figures. So that trooper on the left, all the armour and both helmets are all 3D printed. That's a guy called Ricky Ma, who Ricky MA, I think it's Ma. He sells the armour files, and they're already scaled down to 6 scale. So you just he's got a slightly smaller printer than me, so he gives you the files pre-sliced, all ready to go. So you just drop them on your build plate as one file, and it's got all the different parts on, or they're individual and you slice them yourself. Because I've got a bigger build plate, it takes 2 prints for me to do the whole armour, so I just reslice them myself and do them. But they're all designed to fit a standard narrow shoulder body, not a stormtrooper body, so you can get any generic body and use it. It's a great kit, but like I said before, I need some flexible resin ideally for stuff like the belt, and the knee pads and the elbow pads, because when you get them over this lump here in your arm, they tend to snap. One good thing about resin though is when it does snap, it snaps really cleanly. So if you do get a break, you can glue it back and
Yeah.
you can't tell, but you don't. You might have a very thin line, and that's about it. They're very clean breaks when it does break.
It's really easy to glue as well, isn't it? Like super glue
Yeah.
works really well with it.
Stupidly easy. So the 3D printed Trooper, I did that, and then that Batman sculpt is that Lux sculpt one I was on about, that I got him to design, because originally I wanted an Unreal Customs one, but he wanted like my national insurance number and stuff like that, and I don't tend to give that type of stuff up over the internet. You know, it's kind of like your national.
It's like a social security.
Yeah, it's like a social security number. Like you don't need it. So I was like, I wanted one for my Batman, and like I said, I reached out to Luxscope, and Bob's your uncle. He did me one. I printed it and painted it. The Vader, the bashed up Vader, that is actually a misprint. So I got sent that file to print for someone because it's quite thin. All the supports were kind of up inside it. When I took the supports out, it ripped out the eyepiece. So I've had it sitting on my desk for about a year. It's just something that sits there. And at the weekend I thought, oh, hang on, I've got a spare Sideshow Vader sculpt. I wonder if it fit inside it. So I pushed it up inside it, and I was like, oh, it does. I'm going to cut that eye out and do what other people have done and do a fucked up Vader. So sometimes you can, having a misprint, you can get away with using it if you're a bit creative. And then the unmasked Vader sculpt was a free sculpt that came with a quarter scale Vader statue I bought mainly for parts, because I thought, I like the stand on that, and I like this, and I like that, so I thought I can print those and just keep the bits I want. I think it's done by David Pattendine. It's a really good sculpt. I've got miles and miles of usage out of that sculpt. I really like it. Then I've got a couple of pauldrons that I've done, which fit the Hot Toys one. You just scale them to the right size. It originally comes as 2 parts. So what you can do using your slicer is join the bits together and then save it as one file. When you're joining stuff digitally, you've only got to be mindful of any gaps. So what you don't want to do is have it just hovering above and not flat. So if you have a little opening, you can't cure it or wash it, and then that's when you'll get splits. But if you kind of merge them together, it's fine. And then Luxscope also does busts. That I've printed a few of those off, and the good thing about the busts is the heads come off and you can put them on a 6 scale figure. So my Mando is the bust there, and then what you do is you take the head off, and then you can just plonk that on your Mandalorian figure, and then when you want the helmet back on, you just put it back on the bust. So you've got that option to be able to display it either way. He's done loads of stuff. And then and then Salacious Crumb was from Thingiverse as well. That was a free file from Thingiverse.
I love that. And again,
Paintwork
it just
is so good.
Yeah, it goes back to what I said before. You can't believe someone would give that file away for free. It's so good, and yeah, you've done it justice with the paint, like Zach said.
So he does another version as well where he's sitting down. So you effectively get a sitting Crumb with no cushion, so you can put him on the edge of something. So if you've got the throne and all that, you can just pop him on the end. But that was by far, I'd done 2 of them. I had got one to paint as a commission, and I printed one off and did one for myself. That is probably one of my favourite things I printed.
Oh, it's great. You know, I've actually just bought today, and this is another commission I'm doing. Max Rebo and the band from Jabba's Palace.
Legend.
Yeah, Max Rebo, Sideshow, Noodles, and Drooping with Cool. So I've been asked to print the entire band off in 1/6 scale, which is it's quite a task. I've just bought the files today. It cost about $80 for the files for the whole band. But yeah, I'm looking forward to printing it. It's going to be quite a job, and it's going to use a lot of almost the entire build area of my big printer to do some of the Max's piano and all that. But it'll turn out well, I can tell.
Yeah. Yeah, there's loads. The thing is with 3D printers, the options are endless. There's so much stuff you can get. So much. And what you end up doing is you end up collecting quite a vast amount of files. Some you will never even print. You buy them and you go, oh, I'm going to print that, and you don't. I've got files for the Mandalorian's like swoop bike. I was going to print it, but it's just sitting in my phone. I've not done anything with it.
Same.
You do tend to just collect files and go, oh, I'll print that at some point. Oh, I'll print that at some point.
It's funny that you say that. Like, there's like a Thingiverse style website for Microsoft Flight Simulator, and people upload like, oh, like I really like flying JetBlue, so I made the JetBlue livery for the plane, or oh, I wanted to fly an F-14, so I modeled and like textured and everything. It's like this crazy amount of work to make this thing, and then they're like, oh, but you can have it for free. And then and you go to the marketplace where you could buy the planes, and it's like $100, right, for like essentially maybe just a slightly better version. Each download for free. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thingiverse is great. I've looked in Thingiverse, some fantastic things, some fantastic stuff up there.
Yeah, it's a great place to start, especially when you first get your printer and like, what can I print? You spend hours on Thingiverse just looking at stuff, and then
right?
you then can't decide what to print first because there's so much good stuff.
Ian, I got to step up for 1 second. I'll be right.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, it's Thingiverse is ideal. Like I remember when I first got mine, and you just sit there for hours. You just type in like Star Wars, and you go, I want that, and I want that, and I like that, and I want that. And there's a guy called Sid Naik.
Yes,
and he does really good busts and things like that. And my Kylo, it didn't have a Kylo sculpt, so I downloaded the bust and used the head. They were quite reasonably priced, and he does a lot of Star Wars stuff and a lot of Game of Thrones stuff. And there's all these different sculptors, and there's the Patreon. There's different sculptors that give Patreon benefits. So you sign up for like a tenner a month. You get access to a massive back library, and then you get access to like a new sculpt every month, or a new piece of armor, or new something. So finding files is super easy. My only concern at the moment is lots of people are making lots of different things, and we know from 6 Scale that companies don't like people making their stuff. Particularly when it comes to copyright and things like that. My only concern at the moment is as it gets more and more popular, and the more, say, movie studios and companies clamp down and say, you can't sell that, or you can't give that away for free, because people are printing stuff and selling it. That's my only concern at the moment.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was going to say just on how easy it is to resize stuff, and as soon as you realize that when you first start, you think you can literally download any file, resize it to 6 Scale or quarter scale or whatever scale you want, and it's just so easy to do. That's probably the first thing you learn as well, isn't it? Just resizing things.
Buy a pair of calipers. Getting a pair of calipers, because I remember, I can't remember if I've done it, but that Sean Dabb sculpt that he gave away, trying to figure that out without calipers meant the first one I did was fucking massive, and I was like, fuck. Definitely need some calipers just to measure an existing head sculpt and go, I was way off. But there's plenty, like you say, you can just download anything, scale it down. It's made me rethink how I collect.
Opens up all sorts.
Yeah, I mean, you look at, when I look at the exclusives that come with stuff, and I look at and when you hear, particularly one of the groups, when you hear people go, well, it should have come with this, and you think, it's not a bad idea, actually. I wonder if there's a file for that. Oh, there is. Oh, I can have that. That's fine. And you scale it down, you print it. It's like all the additional Mandalorian stuff before the Beskar one came out. People were printing Cantonos and big fucking Mudhorn stands and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
And you just kind of go, okay, this is where it gets really cool. And particularly in vehicles, like people doing blurgs and swoop bikes and combining resin and normal printers.
Then Hot Toys come along and make them anyway.
Yeah, but I honestly think it's because Hot Toys look at the groups and they see what people are doing and what people go mental for, and they go, we can mass produce that.
Yeah.
Like this whole Grievous thing with the joints. I was looking at the joint pieces thinking, surely someone can print that. Can print a better joint. Yeah, because obviously not our resin, because it would be probably stronger than what they've given us. But
even resin would be, but do that in FDM and it'd be, do it in PLA, it'd be a lot stronger. Yeah,
so there's bits like that, and if I mean, Watto, he's a great example. He's got a print farm. He's got loads of machines, and he started off doing the replacement parts for Kenner vehicles and stuff like that. Brilliant idea, because you can get scanners and stuff like that as well that you can literally scan parts and print it. So the options are really, really
software
endless.
You can get for your mobile phone now, isn't there? And you just scan it with your phone, and then it just the software then converts it into a 3D image.
Yeah, I mean, when you see, because you see it on the Facebook groups where people have done that, and you kind of go, that's not going to be any good, and then they show you the print, and you go, that's pretty good actually. That's way better than I thought it was going to be.
People doing their own heads now, aren't they? Like of their own head.
Yeah, like I was tempted just to see what they come out with. But yeah, it's an insane thing. And when it comes to toy collecting, there's just so much more you can do.
Totally.
Because I know in the last sort of year, there's probably another 5 or 6 people who've gone out and bought printers.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of the customizers in the hobby now have gone and bought printers, haven't they? Because they realised actually it opens up so much more possibilities to feel when you're making custom figures, especially.
Yeah, and stuff like, so say like this battle damaged sculpt in the middle, you don't mind taking a Dremel to it. So when I first started customising, you would have to buy a helmet and you would have to cut the fucker up, and you'd sit there and go, this was 30 quid.
Yeah.
If I fuck this up, that's 30 quid down the drain.
Yeah, you might not get another one easily either.
No, exactly. Whereas something like that, you go 4 hours worth of printing, and half the time, if you know you're going to be cutting it up, you print 2 off anyway, because it doesn't take you any more time, so you've always got a spare. And stuff like this, where like I was doing the battle damage on this replacement one, I've actually cut that too deep, and I've gone, oh fuck, oh well, I'll print another one off. Whereas if that was an actual proper Hot Toys dome, I'd be having kittens going, what the fuck am I going to do?
Yeah.
Whereas now it's like, well, because when I was spray painting one up, it fell off and just smashed into a million pieces on the floor. If that was something I'd bought, I'd be livid. But I was like, oh fuck, oh well, I'll print something else then. I'll just do it again. So anyone who's mildly interested in customising, it's the way forward.
By definitely.
Far. By far. And it's not as expensive by a long way.
No, the small stuff you can print, like a head is only going to cost you a few quid to print, isn't it? It's the smaller stuff's really, really cheap to do. Yeah, and like I said, with a lot of the Mandalorian, like knee pads and thigh pads and stuff like that, even if I had a smaller printer, you could probably get 6 on the build plate, easy. Yeah.
I mean, if you decided you were going to print them all upright, it would take you longer, but you could stack them up and get way more on. But I think the knee pads, if I print a knee pad out, it only takes 40 minutes. It's not long at all.
That's nothing, is it really?
No. And when I think about my first printer, that 40 minutes would be like 3 hours. Like, it saves so much time with a new printer.
We're not quite Star Trek replicator times yet, are we? Getting the tea Earl Grey hot in about 3 seconds, but it'll get there. It will get faster and faster.
Well, I was sent an email by it was either Anycubic, I think it was Anycubic, and they're touting their new printers. So you can jump on the GoFundMe page for it, and you'll get one for like 400 quid instead of like 800 quid. But what they've actually done is they put a projector in the bottom of the unit. So instead of it being an actual screen, it's a projector. So it projects the light up onto it, and apparently it's meant to be 5 times quicker, and you get like 12K clarity out of stuff, and it looked phenomenal, but expensive.
Yeah, but it'll
Really
come down in price as it always does.
Yeah, I mean, I looked before we came on. I had a look to see how much the Mono X was, and Amazon wouldn't 650 odd quid. Direct off of Anycubic was 450.
Right.
So they're starting to go down the bigger machines, because now you've got the 8K and the bigger. You've got the new resin printers with the bigger build plates that people are printing actual helmets on.
Yeah, the new Frozen Sonic Mega, whatever it's called, the 8K one, that's huge.
Yeah. Yeah, someone was on the groups and they were printing a full-on Iron Man helmet on it. And he printed like Loki's mask, like the one from The Mask, the actual wooden mask and stuff like that. It looked phenomenal. Because you get that detail out of it, for someone who, you know, wants a display helmet and stuff like that, you've got no prep, hardly any prep at all. Tiny bit of rubbing down, bit of filler primer, and away you go. Like, it probably saves the prop people quite a bit of money.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
8K
it's pretty much finished the moment it comes off the printer now, isn't it? Whereas instead of all the work you had to do on the older villains,
gluing it together, sanding it, priming it, all of that, you just don't have to do half of it. Just take the supports off, prime it, done. You're pretty much sorted. Yeah. So, Zach, are there any other questions about 3D printing that you think you can...
Let me think. So definitely go with mono is what you're saying. Instead of LCD. 100%. I like that. I think it makes a lot of sense what you're saying about the internals. It's kind of like a PC, right? Like, you could buy any kind of PC, but they basically have like AMD or Intel on the inside. So it's just a matter of the bobs and bits. That makes a lot of sense, because this shit has been super fucking confusing. I did look while we were talking earlier. I did look into the curing station, but I didn't see a wash station. So, I mean, if you're doing water, okay, I think this was just a curing. It was the Elgu Mercury, but it looked like it was just like a tube of light. It didn't look like it was a washing station too.
So there's been a couple of versions of that.
Yeah. What you normally have is you'll have the column with the lights on, and then you'll have the turntable piece. The turntable piece normally comes out because it's got some magnets on the bottom. You normally drop in your bucket effectively, and that's got the fan in with some magnets on the bottom of that. So the machine is effectively just a spinning magnet and a light. So when you set it to wash, you just all it does is turns the lights off and just spins the magnets, so it just washes.
So the original Mercury, I'll just look at a quick look now. The original Mercury is like a black cylinder with a silver handle on top. That is just a curing station. Whereas the newer ones, I think it's the Mercury Plus, which is the newer version, is a wash and cure. So that's where you switch out the turntable for the bucket, if you like, and the bucket has a little fan inside that spins the water. It's like a turbine, basically. That basically agitates the water and moves it around, and that's what washes the actual thing itself. It's all driven off magnets.
I mean, if you're going for a wash and cure machine, I'd probably go for one off of eBay. Try and pick one up second hand. You can probably get one of the first generation.
Or even just go on Anycubic's website or Creality's website. It doesn't, if you have an Elegoo printer, you don't need the Elegoo wash and cure.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, get the Anycubic or whatever's cheapest, really, because they're all. When I've just gone on Anycubic's website, you can get the Wash and Cure 2 for $109. And they tend to do free shipping. They quite often have discounts as well. So yeah, and you can get the big one for 209. I think. I mean, Ian, you got a really good deal on the wash and cure you got, didn't you?
Yeah. So the wash and cure I got was similar to the price of the small one. Every now and again, an eCubic will just have an absolutely mental sale, and they it's almost like they've got too much stock and they just mark it down ridiculously.
Or there's a new model coming out, so it could be either way. Yeah,
so my wash and cure didn't cost anywhere near that. I think it was just over £100 or something. It wasn't a lot. Wasn't a lot at all for what it was.
Yeah, but the Anycubic one usually is the best price. Their wash and cure.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys answered every question. I mean, like it seems like resin is the way to go, and I know you guys are saying like you kind of went through like how much bottles you go through, but you also print like a ton, like a lot more than I think I would be printing. So I mean, I think you answered everything. I mean, the big thing was the slicing software and the support structures, but I mean, you said you can auto-generate and just kind of pick and choose it. So, and all that stuff comes with the purchase. Like you just download it, like with
Exactly. Most people use Box, which is the go-to one that everyone tends to start with. I use a different one called Lychee, which people tend to find later on and realize that it's actually better. And there's a paid-for version, like a premium version you can pay for, which I do. It's like $4 a month. But you get lots of extra features with that. I prefer Lychee just because it's nicer to use. But Box is more than fine.
Yeah, I'm excited, man. I'm super excited. I think I want to get one, but the thing is, I don't want to paint things. So it's like I was thinking, because we're trying to think of what to do for the Patreons for the top tier, and I was thinking like being able to print like, oh, if you need like an accessory or something, you know, within reason we could print it, right? I mean, I don't want my whole life to be just printing things. But then like I don't want to deal with having to paint all the things that we print.
But when you think about it, so there's some stuff. If you're printing if you're going to offer something that's black, for argument's sake, you just print it black. Like you can get coloured resins and stuff. And I'm not being funny as well. If you say to people like, you're going to get, for argument's sake, if you said, I'm going to give someone a Clone Trooper set of armour that I printed, they're not going to care if it's painted or not. They're just going to be happy to have that. So, you know, saying to someone, you've got to paint it or arrange for someone to paint it isn't a big deal. It's half the battle. It's better than nothing. And when you look at some of the stuff you can print for people, some of it is dead easy to paint. I know I broke the leg, but I started doing a pickle Rick. Like, it's dead easy. So you could literally print pickle Ricks off and send them to people, and it wouldn't be a big deal if they'd have to paint it themselves.
I mean, I've painted. Like, I'm pretty familiar with resin, like finishing and like, because obviously we do a lot of work with Wattos and so I'm familiar with all that. So I think I'm like kind of over the edge of making that decision, but then I'm like kind of weighing all the options, like, you know, because not everyone wants custom stuff. So like we've been thinking of like hats and stuff to send to people, you know, like different swag items, you know, every 6 months or something like that. So I'm just trying to figure out like the thing.
So I'd say buy a printer for you, for what you want to do with it, and then if there's stuff that you can do for Patreonies and stuff like that, then that's a bonus. It's because I think it's like, because I print stuff to sell stuff, and I print stuff to customize it and sell it, and some stuff goes like that. So the Mando stuff literally paid for my printer within about 2 weeks.
And that's the thing, right? Like I wanted to be able to take advantage of that as a fundraising thing for the network too, right? So like, because we've done runs a few times of different random things. It would be nice to have, you know, the ability to do that, to raise some funds. Because we always have things like, you know, next year we're going to expand into XLR. Being able to fund that with something else, I think would be
what you have to take into account though is there's some stuff you will print that you will think will fly off and everyone will love it. It sits there for months before anyone touches it. You've also got to think of the resin cost as well, So a bottle of resin will cost like 40 quid. And actually, if you're batch printing stuff and you're filling up that, say you got a Mono X like I've got, and you print that, you fill up that build plate, you will use quite a lot of resin. But what you will do is, because the vat is a lot bigger, you'll pour half a bottle of resin in every time you print, and you almost kind of go, and if you're like me, you kind of go, well, it seems a shame not to fill up the build plate. So sometimes you will just waste resin on shit that doesn't go anywhere. Misprints, stuff like that. So when you are printing to sell or to do stuff for people, you have to think of how long the machine's tied up for. Means that you can't print anything else because that machine's tied up. You've got to think of, actually, if it does fuck up, how much that's another print. Yeah, how much have I lost? Yeah. Like Steve said earlier, there's stuff you can do to repair things. If it's only a small failure, but then that's more time you've got to sit there and process.
You have to expect failures. Yeah, failures will happen. Even when you get good at it, you'll still get failures.
And sometimes there's no rhyme nor reason. You can print the same file in the same position, in the same place for days upon days upon days, and it will be fine. Then all of a sudden it will just not work, and it will just fail.
Like a temperature change or something stupid.
Yeah. Because I find in the middle of the summer when we had that heat wave, everything printed absolutely fantastic because the resin was really fluid and it was great and it was fantastic. But in the winter, when the resin's colder and it's a lot more resistance to it, you tend to get some more failures. So it really does depend on a lot of things.
Yeah. Well, I think
so. There you go.
I think I learned everything I need to know. Did we do the Patreon read already? Sorry, my dad came and I needed to get him some stuff.
No,
you want to go
haven't.
Take care of that?
Yep. If we just say thank you to our two wonderful sponsors first, let's just play the ads, and then we go. No worries. We go straight in.
Only Fools and Collecting is brought to you by Watto's Scrapyard. They 3D print parts for your hard-to-come-by Kenner vehicles. They 3D print 1/12 and 1/6 scale head sculpts from a massive back catalogue. If there is a particular character you want, he can design and 3D print it for you for a reasonable price. Check him out on Facebook and Instagram. Backdrops and bases displays are printed directly to substrate on foam display board using UV matte inks, so there is no fade or glare. The nameplates are precision etched using their in-house laser machine. They offer a very bespoke service designing displays and nameplates to your requirements. You can contact Backdrops and Bases via their Facebook page, Backdrops and Bases.
Wow, that was
Thank you very much, guys. It was many an hour spent on that. So I don't want to butcher everyone's name. Would you do the honours, Zach?
Oh, fuck. I'm not usually the reader. Big shout out to the Patreon to Sean Fear, Ian Seavey, Renee Mendez, Eric Mariscal, Quinn Aguirre, Leo Hernandez, King Louis, Mark Pearson, Paul Schreiber, James Colley, Jean Breda, Equan, Chris Valencerina, Danley, Dee Martin, Stephen Crett, Big Ol' Fern, King Zachary V, Caesar Marquin, Mike Cruz, Lisa Martin Bomansky, Rick De Gregorio, Alvin Jules, John the Everyday Collector, Ricardo Valdez, Jose C.Z. Bola Boyd, Jimmy James, Mario Cortez, Stephen Purchase, Sean Usby, Scott Bradley, Steve and Maria Stanley, Jesse Contreras, Eddie Manzanares, Joe Corpus, Louis Bennett, Kevin Vagar, and Chip Perrin. Thank you so much for your patronage. I'll let you take over on this slide, Ian.
Cool. So we have, if you want to be one of these merry band of men, we have 3 tiers with the Sweet Angel at $5 per month. Let me load this up. If you want patron exclusive swag from the Collecting Weekly Network, you got it here. $5 a month includes a sticker sent straight to your door, as well as access, not access. That's a completely niche thing that will cost you more than $5 a month. Wow. Access to After Dark replay. We've also got the Certified Crispy, which is $15 a month. This tier includes an official certified crispy certificate on the first pledge, assistance with figure fixes by Zach, just message him beforehand, and if you're in the UK, just drop us a message and we'll sort you out. And all the benefits of each of the previous tier, international postage will be charged at cost for the certificates, so that's anyone outside the US. And there's the 25 What a Guy tier. So they get the Sign Collecting Weekly Live 18 by 24 silhouette poster on the first pledge, doubles of all the stickers, and all the benefits of the previous tiers. And again, international postage are charged at costs, or a free printable file can be sent. Lovely stuff. So that's our Patreon. Give it a go. We've also got lots of lovely swag on TeePublic at the moment. So we got our Only Fools t-shirt for the OnlyFans.
Wow.
We got Ox Plays, Collecting Weekly, Gooch Grease, which is my personal favourite. And I really like the Small Talk one with the little bleeding arsehole there, which is fantastic. So that's the swag. If you do want to go buy a t-shirt, that would be fantastic because it really helps. And this is us. This is the network. This is everyone.
I can do you this one if you want. Yeah, sure.
It's probably about time that on an episode of OFAC we get a proper read through of this.
Yeah, I don't want to hear Ian roast everybody.
Go on.
And good for you, Ian. I'm back in the cockpit, baby. I got more ammunition there. We got Small Talk, all the smaller figures, every other Thursday, alternating with in and outs of collecting. Or I'm sorry, OFAC every other Thursday. So one Thursday will be OFAC, one Thursday will be Small Talk. Collecting Weekly Live every Tuesday at 8:30. The best show on the network. Not the Crown Jewel though. That's OFAC. Don't ever forget that. The Ringcast. We got to get a Crown Jewel T-shirt one day for OFAC. The Ringcast, the new Lord of the Rings show we started. It's monthly, hosted by Mark, along with our monthly Live and Let Dice, hosted by Cody, with Dean, myself, Deanie, and James playing. And I think we're gonna have some kind of NPC style characters every once in a while. Every Monday, Collecting Weekly Live Unboxing. After Dark every Wednesday. And then Ox Plays. We'll probably be alternating Fridays with In and Outs of Collecting. So tons of great stuff on the network there. And then we have Collecting Weekly Clips on Instagram. So it's Collecting Weekly _clips. Your favorite moments of the Collecting Weekly shows, minus apparently OFAC, uploaded weekly in 60-second shorts. So
I've got to admit, I am quite lazy when it comes to that. I think this would be really good for clips. I'll do it. I'll add it. I'll send it over, and then I forget. And then it's only when we come back on the following week I'm like, "Fuck, I didn't do the clips." But yeah, could be worse. Could be a lot worse. I think you're muted there, mate.
I learned a lot today. I think everyone else did too. And if you have any questions, you can hit up Ian and Steve on Auxiliary. And they might be able to help you with their 3D printing needs. But yeah, it's a great bonus.
Definitely. Cool. Well, thank you, everyone. And if this is Christmas when this airs, have a Merry Christmas. Or happy just Christmas. A normal Happy September. If
Hanukkah.
We've all got your Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, whatever. Baba Ganoush, whatever it is.
Wow.
Away we go.
Gilgamesh.
Yeah. Right. Well, thanks, everyone. And we shall see you later.
See ya.
Bye.
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 Shalom.